Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we're fortunate to have with us Swapan Kataria, the co-founder and CEO of Crown LNG. Swapan is a very visionary leader who has been at the forefront of empowering young minds, driving innovation and creating a more dynamic future for India. So let's grab this opportunity to learn from one of the leading voices in this space and get inspired by Mr. Swapan's perspective on what it truly means to have an empowered youth and an energized nation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Kataria to the stage. I would also like to call on stage Palki Sharma, who will be taking this conversation forward.
Namaskar, good morning, and welcome to this session. Joining me as introduced is Mr. Swapan Kataria, co-founder and CEO of Crown LNG, and we will talk about energy security, and how it can help empower India's growth. Mr. Kataria, first of all, thank you for being here. And India is the world's most populous country, also among the youngest. So the energy need is only going to grow, and yet energy poverty is very real in our country. How do we bridge this gap between the demographic dividend and this lack of access, equitable access to energy? And how does LNG fit into the picture?
Palki, first of all, thanks for having me. And energy is a very complex subject. I don't disagree with you. I think India needs to address it on every front. For 1.4 billion people and growing, we need every kind of energy that is out there. LNG is only one aspect of it. We have coal. Everybody, I'm sure, has heard about solar and wind. I don't think there's anybody in the world who hasn't thought of being green. But at the end of the day, I think one of the major players in the future that I see in India is nuclear power. So if you mix all of them, and the new technologies that we haven't even seen yet would probably come out mostly in storage that I see, I think added together, India needs to grow on every front. It should not be that, oh, you know, we have solar growing and not focusing on LNG, LNG growing and not focusing on coal, coal growing and not focusing on nuclear. I think all of them have to move forward together if we really want to grow.
Right, but there's so much talk and focus, talk more than focus on renewable energy. Yet you're talking about LNG. So is LNG, according to you, a bridge fuel, or is that a long-term bet that we'll have to make?
I think it's the latter, in my belief. I probably sound biased because I'm from the industry, but at the end of the day, in my 30-year career, I've seen solar and wind grow a lot, and they're here to stay. I'm not saying we're taking anything away from that. But at the end of the day, for India, we need on-demand power. You cannot grow jobs and help the youth without industry, and you cannot build industry without on-demand power. And for you know, the capabilities that nature has in its own hands, you cannot guarantee that with solar and wind, unfortunately. So you have to look at coal, you have to look at LNG, and you have to look at nuclear.
Right, and for a country like India, where the demand is so big, where we have, at a policy level, committed to sustainable development, and yet at the same time we have a very ambitious growth target. It's not an easy balance to have. 75% of our energy comes from coal. Do you think that in the near future it would be possible for India to decouple from coal?
I don't think so. An honest acceptance. Of course, we have to work responsibility to grow less, and I think we have to focus on technologies like carbon capture. If you wanted to run a diesel-fired plant in the mountainous region, or you do a coal-fired plant, if you were capturing every ounce of that carbon coming out, not creating any atmospheric carbon at all, that could be a huge solution. I don't see India working towards carbon capture at all. No, I shouldn't say at all, but not at the pace it should be. Maybe that is a different aspect that we should think about, just from a different angle.
Right. And you mentioned nuclear energy, and that is something that a lot of countries are increasingly turning to. How do you see India in that space, and what sort of progress, according to you, have we made, and what are the points that we need to focus on?
So I think if you ask me from the outside, I'm not a nuclear physicist or something, but I have a simple logic because I've been in the industry for so long. I think India's dependence on nuclear is limited because of the participation of uranium, which India does not have, and it's very difficult to enrich it. So you're ultimately going to be dependent on the US or Russia or Canada, whoever has that uranium. But India does have thorium. So there are nuclear technologies out there which India can develop indigenously, and I don't think there's enough focus doing it, honestly. I think there should be. The other thing that I see where you say transition fuel for LNG, I think nuclear plants take a long time to happen, and they're not that simple to just create overnight. So is LNG going to play a role over the next 10, 20, maybe even 30 years? I see it 100%, yes.
Energy security, of course, is an economic issue and imperative. It's also a geopolitical issue. There's a reason why we call it a strategic asset. And geopolitics is changing at a rapid pace. How do countries like India, which are dependent on energy sources from outside in a big way, ensure that while their demands are met, their sovereignty is not compromised?
Very difficult question to answer, but let me try. So when we think about energy security, we always use energy security as two words in the same sentence, but security could be in different aspects. You need a tank, you need a plane, you need defense, you need missiles, you need so many other things for defense. Energy, on the other hand, adds value to security from a geopolitical standpoint. It helps you kind of, keep working with your friends rather than your enemies. And then once you get dependent on them, it's very difficult to pick a fight with them. It's like getting married. It's not easy to take a divorce. And when you do, it always leaves a trauma. So I think India will have to choose its LNG partners or coal partners or nuclear partners very carefully. But I still feel coal and nuclear, India can do it on its own. LNG is something it cannot. But it has to be a part of that energy mix. Because there are areas, there are specific requirements where every industry will be needing different kind of fuel. Because if you wanted to do something in Kashmir, for example, it's very difficult to take a gas pipeline there in the mountains. So you would need a different kind of electricity plant or a power generation unit in Kashmir as compared to something closer to the shore where you can develop larger industry, which will need maybe coal or gas. So it will be very region specific and demand specific. So if, let's say, Assam comes along and says, oh, I need to grow industry in Assam, or Kashmir comes along, I don't think it's easy for them to get gas. So we're not focusing on targeting our marketing there, for example, but the nuclear would be great if it can work there.
That was the premise of globalization, one of the many, that if you have money at stake, if you are linked to each other through businesses, then you will not pick a fight. But we've seen that being uprooted over the past few years, first between Ukraine and Russia. And energy was what linked them, Russia and Europe, more like. And then we're seeing what we're seeing in terms of the tariffs that are being imposed across the world. This is a particularly complicated matter because you cannot build these supply lines overnight. You cannot even end them overnight. It takes years of investment and effort to do it. In this current scenario of flux, what would be your advice to policymakers?
I think, as I said earlier, indigenous technologies need to be grown. Like even for us, if we're in the LNG business and we operate in various countries in Asia and Africa and South America and Europe, and we see that, India is not doing enough to grow its own technology. So if I had to make a plant, I need a compressor, I need a power plant, I need some special alloys which can take minus 165 degrees of liquid, which is LNG. So they're not available in India. So I think the industry is not being able to grow. If it was available in India and Indian government was doing enough to create those patented technologies within India, it would certainly have less dependence on overseas.
Indeed. Let's talk jobs now. How can LNG and the broader energy sector become engines of employment for the Indian youth, and we need a lot of jobs in this country.
Actually, it just baffles my mind. Most of the kids that I meet, they want to go into IT. They want to move their keyboards, and the real jobs are in the energy sector, in the oil and gas sector. People don't find that working for an oil and gas company maybe is that, glamorous. I think that the mindset has to change. Even if you look at most of the colleges and universities, they have petroleum courses, very limited universities have them. I think that skill set development has to be there because, we are having, power plants which don't have skill set available for people to run it today because there are not that many youngsters going into that field. So I don't think the government can do it alone though. I think the private sector and the government have to work together to get that skill set up. And I think there are tons of jobs. This is one of the biggest booming sectors for jobs, and the young people should be training themselves into nuclear, into gas, into coal, into power sector, into ancillary industries which can operate on these, related to these energy industries.
Is that a conversation that you've initiated as a leader in this space? Because from what I understand, the current government has put a lot of focus on skill development. We've had a ministry in place for more than a decade now, and you think that there's a skill gap to engage the Indian youth in the energy sector. Is that a conversation that's even happening?
We are trying to, rock the boat wherever we can. I don't think we get too many responses, but if we, shake 10 trees, we might be seeing maybe 1 or 2 of them move. But I think 9 of them should be moving, actually.
I agree. Is there room for the Indian youth to innovate? Because the buzzword is startups now. Everyone's talking about a startup. But this seems like a very capital-intensive, legacy sort of a business or an industry to be in. Is there an opportunity for a young person who comes with, like you said, homegrown solutions or technology or in the startup space? Can people do stuff here?
I think the youth of India is the most powerful youth that I've seen anywhere in the world. Not that I might be biased because I'm from India, but at the end of the day, when I come back, I see that, if I had been born 10, 20 years later, it would have been much better. Because you get an ecosystem of so much energy in people and in kids these days. And I think they don't have that support mechanism, which they need to grow. Because it's easy to say that there is a startup community in India, but it has to be nurtured. Right? Not just nurtured by helping them get orders, getting them also trade finance. And I think one of the biggest missing pieces that I see between startup and realization into commercial activities is the capital aspect of it. And I don't think there's enough capital being spent. There are few people that I've seen in the private sector doing whatever they can in their own world, but I don't think that's enough. I think there has to be a centered focus on startups from the government where, let's say, if I were to be an investment office, for example, give me a tax rebate. I'll invest it in there. So I don't know if there's enough being done to nurture those startups. Yes, they're being given a huge promise that, okay, do it, you get a 5-year tax rebate. But I don't think after that there's anybody hand-holding them to make them into an industry.
Yeah, so you're saying we need more mentorship and we need more incentives, of course, but more mentorship.
100%.
Right. When we talk about infrastructure or policy making, one of the challenges that we see in countries like India is the urban-rural divide, and that applies to energy as well. Energy access. We are heading into a summer that looks, by all indications, is going to be a punishing summer. How do we bridge this divide in the energy space?
I think the only way to bridge it is having better planning. This summer is not happening this year alone, Palki. It's been happening for years. And the bureaucracy is still thinking, oh, we can't move this because that has not happened and that cannot happen because this guy didn't say anything. We have to give up those excuses and just take a call. And somebody up there has to put its foot down and say, okay, enough is enough. We've looked at this for 10 regular years. The summer's growing. It's getting tougher. We take every kind of energy at whatever cost we get at the end of the day in an emergency. It almost is an emergency situation. But if we planned 10 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation today. But if we don't do something today, we'll be in this situation tomorrow.
And Okay, I'll go back a few questions. You were talking about young people entering the space. We have a reasonably young audience as well here. Why don't you share your story with us, and why did you decide to go into the energy business of all things, and what has your journey been like?
I think I was actually living in Russia when I entered the energy space back in 1993. And I was in the trading business, and I fell into a trading contract which was related to trading crude oil, and it was very profitable, and I never looked back after that. But that being said, I think if there was one thing that people should think, that energy sector is not just crude. It has such a vast footprint in our daily lives. It's not funny. You have to actually take a moment. A lot of people don't spend the time to look at oil and gas sector because, as I said, they don't consider that glamorous. I don't know. Maybe if I was in the oil sector, would I get a better date? Maybe that would be the way to look at it for the younger person. But I think from a stability and a job perspective, energy projects are very good. They have a long gestation period, and when they operate 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So I don't think there's any other industry which offers a better job security than the oil and gas industry.
I think that's a strong pitch.
Yeah. I have supported that. I've seen it. For me, it was looking at, okay, how much it's time to money. Okay, the IT sector looks very fancy because everybody thinks that there's a Silicon Valley out there, but this is day to day. You may need this every day. This is not services industry. It is actual products being made which affect and get utilized in our daily lives.
And like you said, you've traveled the world. You've worked with different countries, companies, and of course you worked very closely with players and partners in India. How have you seen the landscape change in India over the last decade when it comes to building better supply lines, ensuring more energy security for the people of the country?
In simple words, I think there is improvement. But if I expand on it, I don't think there's improvement enough. And I'll give you an example, and I hate doing it because I don't think I ever want to compare ourselves with China. But China had the similar kind of population, and they already knew they're in the same situation. They don't have oil and they don't have gas. At least not enough to cater to their own people. In fact, I think India has more gas than China. But what they did was they went out and started buying gas fields globally. So they started investing into those gas fields so they can control the volatility of price for their consumers in their country. It doesn't matter if you have it, right? So when I was brought up with only a little bit of thinking from my father. It doesn't matter if you have it today or not. What did you do today to have it tomorrow? So I don't think we're doing enough today to have it tomorrow either. That's my biggest worry from my perspective.
Even now?
Even now. I think we are trying to do contracts for buying. We are trying to discuss long-term contracts with countries which have it. We are trying to do very good diplomatic relationships with those countries. I don't think we're investing enough. We should not be giving our product requirements into the hands of other people. We should go and buy it ourselves. We should control the value chain. We're not doing enough to control the value chain.
We've set ourselves a target to become an energy secure country by 2047 as part of our larger Viksit Bharat dream. Do you think we'll get there? Is that a very tall target to have set?
So I think I'll be blunt about that as well. Doing what we are doing now, we won't get there. But given the time frame between now and 2047, we have the ability to do it. But the steps have to be taken now.
So you're saying that the gap is at the policy level?
That's what I see.
Right. I hope the policymakers pay heed to advice from you and others like you. I was reading about what you've said in the past, and I understand that you've been a big champion of artificial intelligence in the energy space. How do the two sort of come together?
Actually, they came together because of the demand in electricity, and ultimately the gas fills that electricity requirement. So we started, because we had access to, or we have access. So when you look at India and you want to bring LNG into the country, you have to go through a very rigorous process which has been put together by the Indian government to actually go and enlist and get approved for a license to import product into India. So at the moment, Crown LNG is establishing a project in Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh, which is 7.2 million tons per annum, and which is approximately 10 to 11% of India's total import licenses available today. So when the larger, hyperscalers, they wanted to put these things here, they approached us and said, hey, we need access to on-demand power. We cannot survive on solar and wind, because what if there's no electricity? Then it's not like we cannot operate our data center. So that is how we started our first conversations with them, and we realized that how important on-demand power is. And it's not just about running a data center. Then we started getting into complexities that does your data center have double redundancy, a triple redundancy, or a quadruple redundancy? So now, not only that, if you need a 200 megawatts power plant, for example, they want you to build 600 or 800 megawatts of power for it. They'll use only 200, but the other one should be standby. If the one conks off, the second one starts working. So when you start thinking of that much of built-in optionality, you start thinking about that kind of a cost infrastructure. We felt that it's something which we can certainly support. And that's what got us into the AI.
That's very interesting, actually. And the way you put it, one would have thought that that's common sense and most people would do it, but I'm surprised that it's not happening.
I thought the same before I got into it.
Right. Swapan Kataria, thank you very much for your insights and for your policy prescriptions that we hope reach the right people and trigger the changes that need to be made.
Well, I'm always here to help if they need me.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being such a fabulous audience.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.